Welcome everyone to my July webinar for Partnership for Wellbeing. I'm David Sands and I'm very glad to have all of you with me tonight for this presentation. There's been so much going on in the world lately, so much stress. I thought I would do what so many people in the field are doing, which is a webinar devoted to how we deal with our response to, our reaction to all the stresses in the world. It isn't just the pandemic itself and our concern perhaps about getting seriously ill, but the isolation that we may be feeling as we shelter at home, and as we keep ourselves from participating in our usual activities, going to restaurants, playing in sports and such, things that, particularly indoor activities that we feel would put ourselves and perhaps other people at risk. And so we're feeling very isolated. A lot of people are having stress reactions, and I think that's the main thing that we want to talk about tonight, is to recognize our stress reactions and to learn how we can work with them and keep them from overwhelming us, so that we keep our life on an even keel and feel comfortable, even if we're not completely happy with the circumstances in which we have to live at this time. So what are some of the things that people are experiencing, that you may be experiencing? And you can put anything you like in the chat box and I'll take a look at it so I can address those things specifically for you, if if you care to have me do that. And I'm just going to make one little note here for myself. There we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. And so there are many things that people are experiencing. Besides the feeling of isolation, of being cut off, feeling lonely, not getting the contact with people that we would normally experience, not even getting hugs for most of us. These kinds of things are really, subtle, but yet very real. A lot of people, though, are feeling quite anxious and maybe having trouble sleeping. They may be having difficulty with their digestion. Blood pressure may be up. And they may just, as I said, feeling anxious, just being uncomfortable, worrying all the time. And as we'll get to in a little while, dealing with the uncertainty of the time, of not knowing what to do, not knowing what the best course of action is, and realizing that nobody seems to know what the best course of action is, which is one of the reasons why there's so much debate about it. But besides the things immediately related to the pandemic, there are also, of course, the political and social divisions in our country. We're dealing with a profound awakening to the nature of racism in the United States, but also around the world. I think that's taking place. And it's striking and surprising, really. But it's creating a great deal of tension in all of our society as we question ourselves, as we question the way our society functions, our police, our governments, our economic institutions, all of the different components that relate to the way racism is part of our system. And that's the thing that's really being recognized right now, is the systemic nature of racism. But it's also classism. It's not just race. There's also the issue of class, which is, as far as I can tell, existed in our Western civilization basically forever. And I think it's also true of the East. And besides all of those things, then, there are the usual financial worries compounded by the fact that many people have limited or reduced employment or are not working at all. Many people have lost their health insurance. their whole security, their whole economic security has been jeopardized. Um, and so the situation, our financial situation, may be worse than ever. Um, and then, if that wasn't enough, we have the issues about the planet as a whole, climate change, and all that that's implying about what's going to happen in the world as the world gets hotter and hotter, possible interruptions to the food supply due to changes in the weather patterns and temperature, and real consequences for real people. Rising sea level is another huge issue that will affect hundreds of millions of people around the world, because living on the edge of the sea is very much something that people want to do. So there we have a whole panorama of things to really cause, excuse me, cause symptoms to arise within us, symptoms of our reaction to stress, or we sometimes just call that stress reactions. Now, these things are not post-traumatic stress responses. These are the actual stress responses. We're in a stressful state right now, but that may exacerbate any previous stress response that we've had within us, what we call post-traumatic stress responses. And so we may be facing forces both present and ancient within our physiologies, raising our blood pressure, increasing our anxiety, giving us a great deal of difficulty sleeping, having difficulty with digestion, and just mood changes, being very irritable, easily frustrated, easily angered. It's like having a lot of buttons that can be pushed very easily that set us off, that just trigger us. All our triggers are more exposed now. And so we're finding ourselves in quite a bit of distress. And so the purpose of our webinar tonight is to recognize those things and learn how to deal with them. So I want to look at that a little bit more deeply. Our stress reactions are primarily in response to uncertainty. It's scary to be uncertain. The instability of our lives brings uncertainty. And therefore, that instability itself, not knowing if we're going to have the money, not knowing if we're going to be well, not knowing if we're going to be able to work, not knowing if we're going to be able to care for our kids and work, because so many of us are working at home and discovering what it's like to be both a parent and a member of the workforce. Our insecurities also are about the risks that we face in going out, in shopping, in socializing, in conducting our business. All of these activities now involve a clear and present danger. There's a risk. It may be large, it may not be so large. It's often hard to know even how big the risk is. Where I live here in Jefferson County, the risk is actually fairly low. We have not had a lot of cases, but we get more cases every week. And it's not exploding, but I've noticed that people have become very cavalier. I was out today, I needed to do some shopping, and I was dismayed, frankly. That's my personal reaction to, and we'll talk about reactivity in a little bit here. My personal reactivity is a kind of dismay that so many people are being so cavalier about facing this virus, this pandemic. They're not wearing masks. They're not observing social distancing. I even commented to a clerk today who was checking me out of one of the stores. I made a joke because I was a doctor, which they didn't actually appreciate, but it was funny for me. And I said, you know, we wouldn't let you in the operating room with your mask like that because their mask was down here. And I guess it was just covering your upper lip. it covered their mouth, but not their nose. And their mouth really was not well covered because I could see it around the edges of the mask. And I was just, I just said, we wouldn't let you in the operating room. And the clerk said, I know, and did not fix it. Now, there was a piece of plexiglass between me and this person, but, the air is moving around. There's just not the observance of taking personal care, taking personal protection against both contracting the virus and possibly spreading it, because we know that in some cases people can spread the virus even before they're symptomatic or just as they're becoming symptomatic, but may not realize that they're actually getting ill. And then they can spread that illness. So the attitude, and I know, and I understand that attitude, I really do, and I'm sympathetic with it on two accounts. One is people are tired. It's been months now that we've been sheltering, and we've been observing, hopefully, wearing masks. And most people are not yet comfortable wearing masks all day long. I have medical experience. I've worn masks for hours and hours on end. When I wear a mask now, and I'm wearing an N95 mask, that's the kind of mask that really is effective at keeping out virus droplets of water, basically, that contain virus particles. I feel quite safe wearing it, but I have it on for a little while and I forget I have it on. Many times I'll go outdoors even, and it's not till I start getting hot under the mask that I realize that I'm wearing it, because when I'm in air conditioning, I just quite literally don't notice it after a couple of minutes and just go about my business. But I know a lot of people find it uncomfortable to keep a mask on. So I'm sympathetic on that account, and also on the account of just recognizing that this has been going on for so long, and there's this uncertainty about when will it end, and how's it going to end? How's this going to play out? We don't really know. We don't know what the best course of action is about reopening the economy, as they say, reopening stores and businesses and restaurants. We've been doing that, and in the states particularly that have opened restaurants and other places where people are socializing and are in close proximity to each other for extended periods. Extended periods simply means that the level of exposure gets higher. And we don't know for certain yet, and we can't really run the experiments on people to see, how much exposure it takes to actually come down with the disease. But there is a feeling that level of exposure has something to do with it. The virus is known to be very, very contagious. It spreads very easily. It's obviously spreading by airborne transmission at least as much, if not more, than by contact transmission. Most of us aren't shaking hands anymore. I've noticed that. And most of us don't get close enough for the elbow bump that we were using at the very beginning of this. Remember the elbow bump? Going like that to another person. I've only done that once in the last 3 or 4 months. And that person was actually facing away from me. I came up from behind him and bumped their elbow with my elbow so that we weren't breathing on each other. But we don't really make contact with people. But hopefully we're wearing masks, we're observing all of that. So there's this constant question about, am I doing the right thing? Is this really necessary? And how long is it going to be necessary? Is there ever going to be an end to this? We don't know what the best path forward is. Our politicians, particularly, I don't want to name party names, but you know what I mean. Certain groups tend to feel that the economy, it's important to get the economy going, and we'll just take the consequences. Some people get sick, some people will die. That's too bad. That's a radical departure from our usual societal concern, where life is paramount. That's what we value the most. We don't want people getting sick. We don't want people dying. We want to keep people healthy. And so, there are those who feel that we should be reopening. And then then there are those who feel that we should really be very cautious and do the best we can to preserve health and to preserve life. So we get down to, how do we manage our reactivity? How do we manage how we feel? Now, again, when I say reactivity, it's the emotional responses to what's going on. Anxiety, feeling isolated, feeling lonely, feeling uncertain, having doubt, not sensing what the best course of action is, or grabbing a hold of a course of action or a set of beliefs about what's going on. That's another response, and it's an emotional response. And I've had some conversations, most of them over the internet, text messages with people that were basically saying, this is all nonsense. This isn't a big problem. I don't know what everybody's so afraid about. The media are blowing this up. There are people that feel that way. And I have some empathy for the feeling inside them that drives them to believe that, to latch onto and gain support from others who believe that, because they feel that, one, their information is more accurate, and that it's a better place to be, not to be in fear. So, stepping out of the fear is one way of coping with fear. On the other hand, that does not protect you against the virus. And so you make a trade-off, and you may be happy with that trade-off, which is fine. But as I've said to some people, if you see me out and about and you're not wearing a mask, please stay away from me, because I don't want to get the disease. But I don't know what's going to happen. At some point, I need to be immune to it. And does that mean taking the immunization, an immunization that we really will be brand new? We won't know the risks, and we may not even know the benefits. We may not know if it works. An immunization, for instance, that only works in, say, 60% of the population, roughly 2/3 of the population, may not be adequate to protect enough people to keep the virus from spreading. We need what was called herd immunity, which means lots of people are immune, so the virus can't spread because they're not getting sick with it and not getting into a state where they're shedding the virus and infecting other people. I'd like to participate in herd immunity, but I certainly don't want to come down with COVID-19 and all the risks that are involved in getting that. And just, it's an influenza type feeling. You feel god awful when you have it. And then there's, just so many complications that it can occur. They're doing a little better job of treating it now, as they better understand the pathophysiology, the process of the disease within the body. And they're saving more people who get seriously ill, or keeping them from getting really seriously ill, keeping them off of ventilators. But I've seen reports of, people say, oh, it's the ventilators that are killing people. Assuming good practice of medicine, which is mostly the case, no, it's not the ventilators that are killing people. People get on ventilators because they're seriously, seriously ill and can't breathe without them. But everything is being done to try to keep people off of ventilators, and they're doing a better job of that now. So that's a good thing. But, gathering that data from all over the world, what works, what doesn't work, that's a big part of the science of healthcare. And it is a science, and it does require input from many different vocations and many different doctors, examining the data and seeing, and compiling it together to see what really does work and what doesn't work. Because one person's observations may look, very valid by themselves, but they may not be borne out elsewhere. And then we have to figure out, if the observations are actually accurate in that particular hospital, why aren't they accurate elsewhere? So there's just so much yet to be learned, and that creates more uncertainty and lack of clarity about how to move forward. And so the problem just gets bigger. So what do we do? Well, the key thing, to use the modern language, we have to stay present. Present means that we have to be observing what is going on from that level of the self that is unmoved. I am experiencing anxiety. I am experiencing fear. I am experiencing uncertainty. I am experiencing loneliness. The phrasing, I am experiencing something. I am feeling something. And then characterizing that within ourselves. I am experiencing anxiety and it feels like a big, prickly hedgehog right in my stomach. And it's sticking me in every direction inside of me. Okay, so that's a nice graphic description of a feeling. And so a simple process is to sit there and I don't know if you're like me, but I'm clearer about my feelings when I wake up in the morning than I am later in the day. When I'm engaged in the day, I go about what I'm doing and I'm not so tuned into my feelings. I'm tuned into my activity. Other people feel their feelings any time of the day. So whenever you feel something, pausing, I'm feeling something, I'm sensing something within me that feels, and then you say what that is, and then you say hello to that. You just say hello to that. Don't try to get rid of it. We don't want to suppress it. We don't want to hide from it. We just say hello to it. Why? Because when we do that, we create that relationship between the observer, the I, and what is observed, the discomfort, whatever that may be. And that space, perhaps you could even feel that now when I pause, that space, oh, hello. Hello to that feeling like a hedgehog in my stomach. It's which I call anxiety. And then you see what happens with it. Just let it be. Just having your attention on that. And then it may change, or other things, other components may come in. I'm frightened, I'm lonely. Okay, so something inside me feels lonely, and lonely feels like what? That's a great phrase. Lonely feels like what, or whatever it is we're feeling. Feels like what? And that invites an analogy. Well, it's like, I used a hedgehog for the first one. It's like air leaking out of a balloon or water running out of a sieve. It's just running out. There's no stability. There's no holding anything. Everything just runs through me. I can't stay there. I'm flowing in all directions and I'm just drained. Okay, drained feels like, oh, empty, no energy. So you just go through the thing like that. You just keep processing it like that. And you may have to do that many times a day, depending on your level of reactivity or what happens during the day. You're out and about, you're wearing your mask. You see a good friend. I had this happen to me this week. Actually, two friends, they were together. And I was coming out of a store and they were coming in. So we were in a relatively small space and they weren't wearing masks. I said, hi. And they recognized me. Oh, hello. How are you? And I said, where is your mask? And they said, oh, it's so nice to see you. And I said, where is your mask? And I walked away. I had to walk away because, in a sense, they were a clear and present danger to me. Because if they're being careless with me, that means they're being careless with other people. And one of those other people, if not 10, may have COVID-19 and share their virus with them. And then they share it with me. So I had to leave. I couldn't stay and talk to them because they weren't wearing a mask. Those kind of experiences, though, oh, that produces a reaction in me. First, there's a certain annoyance, right? Oh, something inside me feels annoyed. And that feels like heat running through my body. And then something inside me feels sad. Oh, I can feel annoyed and sad and isolated because I couldn't socialize with them. So I have three things. So I say hello to those three different things and find how my body feels about each one of those. Sometimes it's a localized feeling. Sometimes it's an all over the body feeling. When I get angry, it's pretty much all over my body. My body is angry. It's hot. It's fiery. Been around me? You know. So we have that experience. So we look inside all those different things, all those different feelings. We try to name them and describe them and say hello to them and let them know we're not trying to get rid of them. We just want to recognize them. We just want to experience them as they are. And what happens is that when there's that space, they transform, they lose their energy. And then you can feel mildly irritated, a little bit lonely, or whatever else the feelings may be. And it's okay because I'm here. I am present. And when you're present, then not only do your feelings feel it, but other people feel it too. You can be genuine and clear with people. Oh, I'm happy to see you. Now, you don't have to say out loud, something inside me feels happy, and that feels like, bubbles and champagne or whatever. It's just, we feel happy to see you. You just say that. We can't hug them, of course, but we feel happy to see them. And we can even say that, I wish I could give you a hug. I'd love to give you a hug right now, but, probably better if we just don't do that. We can live without that. But we got to be careful when we say we can live without that, that we're not just covering it over, that we're saying, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm okay, even if I can't hug that person. That it's a genuine state within us. So being present, it's a great term. It gives us that space to breathe. It gives us a chance to assess adequately the dangers and the difficulties that we face and to find a path forward through all the obstacles that we have, through all the doubts and uncertainties, so that we can survive and thrive even in this difficult time when we have so many stressors and so little that we can do about them. And we just deal with it. I was watching an animal and facing a difficulty getting food. And it just kept working at it. It kept working at it. Finally, it got the food. But the thing that struck me about it was it never seemed frustrated or angry about it. It just had to go about it. I'm not sure I would have done so well if I was that animal squirrel. It was a squirrel. I'm not sure I would have done so well. But the squirrel just did it. It just took it in stride. It knew where the food was. It just had difficulty getting to it. It did finally get to it. And then it just ate the food. Did it celebrate? I couldn't tell. If it did it inside, but I didn't get a clear reading on the squirrel. It just went about its business and then left, which is what squirrels do. So it just processed its situation. And so that's what we can do when we're present and we do this little exercise. We can process our situation and then we'll be okay. So somebody shared with me the thought, you might be able to see it too. Yeah, no, it only went to the panelists. I think you can select and attendees. If under the where it says two, if you select all panelists and attendees, then everybody else on the conference can see it. But anyway, it's okay. And so they were feeling. They actually didn't describe the feeling. I'm going to just point this out. The person who wrote this knows what it was, but what they said was outrageous White House behavior. Now, outrageous is a judgment word, but it doesn't describe really one's feeling. What is the feeling of outrageous that makes you say, that makes you judge that the behavior was outrageous? What is the feeling that's in there? So we can process that some more when we get to the group clearing session. Anyone else have anything they want to ask or comment, please use the chat function. Appreciate that very much, but I'll take just a moment here and just share with people that the next webinar will be August 11th. The topic is yet to be announced, but I will send out invitations to my email list, and it will also be on the Facebook page, Partnership for Wellbeing Facebook page, and it will also be on the website. And I will try to do better next month and get it up on the website more than a week in advance. But anyone who happens to watch this video on YouTube, please track us down and find the webinar on August 11th. All my webinars, I should say most of them. I didn't get the first ones onto YouTube. I didn't record them, but there's many of them there. I did a series of 4 on feelings and the chakra system, which part of that was my own contribution to the field, my experience of doing this, and feeling the different feelings and where they tend to settle into the chakra system, and thus ultimately producing disease within the body. So we talked about that. And then the last one in June was on clans, cults, and conspiracies. And we looked at why people embrace cults and clans and particularly embrace conspiracy theories, and why they join clans and cults and embrace conspiracy theories. And the purpose of that was to understand why that happens, so we feel some empathy. And remember that clans are just a group of people that have some common traits, common beliefs. And so they get together to enjoy those together. Sometimes those could be religious organizations, social clubs, all kinds of things could be clans or cults. Cults have some particular definitions, though, but the structure is the same in terms of why people feel compelled. So those things are on YouTube, and you can look them up. Just do a search for David Sands. If you're watching this on YouTube now, of course, you're already there, so they should appear in the list of suggested videos. Very good. I'm not seeing any more comments, so I'm going to end the recording here. Right. So the one more comment pops up, and it says the White House contradicting the CDC. Dangerous. That may be true, but again, the danger is perceived. It's something we're perceiving. It's a judgment. But what is the feeling? Is it a threat to you? Is it a danger to you? Or is it creating some other feelings of confusion or resentment We can look at that. Okay, so we'll pick that up in the group clearing session. So I'm going to end this here.